Hello, my name's Marcus Katz, and in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to teach you how to learn Lenormand. I'm going to do this by using our 3-minute method, and I'm going to use the Cyberpunk Lenormand, for which there is presently a Kickstarter in the final 48 hours or so of the campaign. So I would encourage you to join us in the quest to get Lenormand in as many hands as possible and to get it learnt from the ground upwards. So I'm going to teach the 3-minute method using 9 cards, and then I'm going to also show a little bit about where the method comes from and the actual history of it, going back to the authentic instruction manual for the Lenormand. So buckle in, hang tight. It's a 3-minute method, a little bit like chess. It takes a few minutes to learn the rules and then a lifetime to master. We take the same approach to cartomancy. With Terosophy, we take a rule-based, skill-based method, and then all of the techniques you can then spend the rest of your lifetime developing and exploring. But it's good to really get into it in a few minutes. So it might look somewhat confusing to see a whole load of cards. Unlike tarot, Lenormand works best with a lot of cards and a clear question. So here, what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly read this this 3 by 3 reading with 9 cards in it for a man who's recently, for example, he's had a financial setback, a shock or something, and he's come to us for more detail about what's happened, what he can do, and so forth. And just to succinctly round up this reading, I'd say something like he's had financial issues in the past, and when he has, it's actually led to big domestic arguments, which is the thing that's weighing on him far more than the finances. But that was in the past. Now he can actually trust those close to him, so it's important that he really reaches out for support. The thing that's going to help him most is his learning, his skills that he has developed in the past, not to try anything new, but to build from that. And this will help his finances. As long as he travels beyond his current audience or marketplace, and continues to take risks, not avoid them. So he might be tempted to avoid risks because of the domestic disputes that he's had in the past when he's had money issues, but this is something that isn't new to him, and he can actually reach out for a lot more support, take a lot of risks and so forth. So very positive. He still actually has money from some sort of previous work that he's done, and what he can control is not the money that he's made in the past, obviously, but his anxiety and lack of clarity. He's actually got it in hand. It's not a problem for him, not as much as he thinks when he comes for the reading. As long as he lists everything that has tripped him up before and really learns from that and ticks off all of the things that have that he's done wrong when he's had financial issues in the past, and just ticks them off and makes sure that they're addressed with a lot of support, but by taking more risks, not less. And so in summary, he's got to get it all out in the open and it will all be fine. And we can read all of that just in those cards. We can read in a lot more detail. We could look at the houses that they were in if they're in a grand tableau. But we can see that this particular method is suitable for the whole of the grand tableau because we just extend it outwards from the cards that are around the significator or sitter's card, their key card, in this case the young man who's come to us with his issue. So how do we do it? Well, here's the 3-minute method, so get ready. First of all, we use the keywords that are on the cards. So I didn't use anything in that reading that wasn't actually clearly stated on the card or isn't a set meaning for one of the cards. The ship card, for example, is all about commerce, it's about travel, risk, adventure, movement, all of the things that you might associate with a trade ship setting off sail to go and do some trading. Books in that position, the card means learning, discovery, etc. Now, those are the actual keywords that are on the cards themselves, but you can fairly quickly learn those words, and we all know that a dog is to do with faithfulness, faithful friend, protection, territory, things like that. Things we associate with a dog, things we associate with clouds being uncertainty, disorientation if you're surrounded by clouds, and so forth. So we're only using the raw keywords on the cards. We're not even stretching to interpret them. But here's the 3-minute method. It's as simple as challenge, lesson, and resource. All you need to do is learn those 3 words, challenge, lesson, and resource, and then interpret the card and its set meaning, sticking to its set meaning, not over-interpreting it, not making a complex metaphor, but using those words, those contexts, those themes of challenge, lesson, and resource for each card. And then all we're doing in this reading is reading it in terms of the columns as past, now, and future. Those of you who are familiar with the Tarosophy 3-minute method of learning tarot will see that all we've done is taken challenge, lesson, and resource, the very 3 things that you only need to learn for this method to work. We've taken them out of the cards because of the way tarot works and into the positions, which is the way Lenormand works. And there's more reasons for why this works and why it works so well, which we'll explore after we've done the 3-minute method. And that's basically it. So the 3 cards at the top are the person's challenge in the past, now, and in the future. The 2 cards to either side are the lesson in the past and the lesson that they have to learn in the future, what this is going to teach them, how they can best learn from this. And the 3 bottom cards are their resources, what they can actually draw on, what they can do about it, where they need to focus on in order to meet the challenges and learn the lessons and get the outcomes in the center row. And of course, the person who is now learning the lesson is the significator, the person themselves, in this case, the young man in the middle. So if you look at the column and the row, he's in the lesson now position, ready to learn from all of this, because the universe is its own inquiry. Everything that we do is a question to the universe of, can this happen? Does this happen? And so we're getting right to the core of what reality is when we do this reading as well. So the 3-minute method is as simple as challenge, lesson, and resource, past, now, and future. So if we go back one slide, okay, well, we can't go back one slide if I'm recording, so we can just do it from here. So if we have the past challenge, the past challenge was to do with the whip, which is about domestic argument. And that's where we got the idea that the past challenge that this person faces, even though we're sticking it to the financial question, is that a financial situation in the past has led to the challenge of the whip, which is about domestic disputes, argument. So perhaps he had a previous partner or the partner he's with at the moment, but it's led to, if he's living with his family, it's led to domestic disputes. And this is the thing that's weighing on them now, that past challenge about their finances, but that's in the past. And now, if you look at their now challenge, which is directly above them, they've got the wonderful dog, which is a guard dog, which is a territorial dog, which is a best friend, a faithful companion. So it means that their now situation is very different to their past challenge. Their now challenge is to really make the most use of faithful friends and really open up to those friends and so forth to support them in their financial struggle at the moment. And the future challenge is the garden, which, as we saw from the keywords and is on the cards themselves, if you have the keyword version of the deck, is about networking, socializing. So it's all about not closing down, and that is the problem that the man faces, because those are the cards of his challenges. But the lesson, then the lesson of the past is everything he's learned. Perhaps they could work in the book trade. They own a bookshop, or they write books or write computer manuals. It could be anything. It could be as literal as that. But it's certainly things that they have learned are lessons in the past, and they're clear lessons. They're things that they can write down. They could write the book on the lessons of financial issues. And the ship in the future for their lesson is to tell them that they can go beyond where their current boundary is. So instead of closing down and almost like trying to save money, not spend it and so forth, that they're to continue taking risks. So that might be the opposite of what they came in with as their expectation before they had the reading. But this reading is clearly saying to go to risk more, adventure more, go further, keep expanding, because this is a very different situation than your past situations. And similarly, the resources that they can draw on, in the past, they were able to draw on a financial stability, or something that made a fair amount of money for them, or that they had a bank account, savings account, even rich parents. It could be any of these things, but they had the resource of liquidity, literally with the fish, in the past. Now their resource is their ability to see through the clouds, to actually be in control of their own clarity and confusion. They can burn through all of that, as long as they have the support of their friends that are above them. So that challenge, lesson and resource we can read down in the present moment is about just making sure that everything is seen clearly through the clouds. And then in the future, their resource is the snake. Now, the snake is a negative card, but here, as a resource, it's that they know what will trip them up. They can see the snakes in the grass because they've been bitten by them in the past, so that they can actually weave their way like a snake through the undergrowth and actually focus on what it is that they need to do, that they have the knowledge to be able to do that. So that is just a very brief cut down version of how we can immediately do a 9-card reading using Lenormand, and you'll recognize that that applies throughout the Grand Tableau, that you can apply challenge, lesson and resource wherever you're reading a card to the cards above in a horizontal line in a row, and also in the columns that the Lenormand Grand Tableau tends to read from past to future, from left to right, respective of the sitter card of the man or woman that's in it. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Know some keywords for each card, use them literally, and understand that each card can be read as a challenge, lesson, and resource. This is our 3-minute method. And what I'd just briefly like to do for those who want to stick around for the end of the recording is just demonstrate where this comes from and why it works. Because the game of hope, which became the Lenormand, laid out in a grand tableau, which is actually the game structure in the original German instructions, is a similar game as we've seen in some of my other videos to the game of Goose and a lot of race games. Here's another example called the Mansions of Happiness from 1843, where you roll dice and you move along the board and go back if you land on a vice and go forwards if you land on a virtue, because these were all narrative teaching games. The parlor games of the time were very literal, were very ethical, very moral. They were very teaching. They were very educational. So in this sort of game, you're trying to learn a lesson as you make progress through life. And this is where the game of hope itself comes from. And so it's written into the Lenormand that it is a morality and teaching storytelling device to apply to life. And so when we go back to the original Game of Hope that sits in the British Museum that Tolly and I re-earthed from the little footnote in Decad, Dumont and De Paulis about Professor Hoffman's work, who said that the Lenormand cards came from the Game of Hope, then if we dig out the German instructions for the game, we can see in the first English translation that we had done by our friend Steph Engert in Germany, also a card reader, developer, co-developer of the Dragon, the Starlight Dragon deck, which is a wonderful deck. But when she translated the German for us, which was the first ever English translation of these instructions, at the end, it says where you can play an oracle game by shuffling the 36 cards, and then, this is the important bit, spinning a jocular tale from the cards nearby around the figures on display. If it's for a man, take card 28. If it's a woman, take card 29. And again, one makes use of the cards surrounding. This will bring much entertainment to any merry company. So it was designed to be able to tell stories with spinning a jocular or positive tale, a fine tale or fine story, depending on how you translate it, from the cards nearby. And we know that that comes from the reading of coffee grounds, where you read the symbols respective of each other, whether they're at the bottom of the cup, middle of the cup, top of the cup, whether they're clear or unclear, whether they're dotted or not dotted, as the original coffee grounds reading style has it, and respective of the distance, whether the dog is right next to the person or whether the clouds are far away. It has less impact in the cup, in the reading of the cup, and this has got translated directly across to the original sort of Philippe sheet. Was just transitioning to the original Philippe sheet in order to sell them as a fortune-telling deck. So you've got a race game deck with coffee ground reading instructions, half inch transposed to cards in a grand tableau, and that's where we get the whole system from. But you'll notice in the Philippe sheet where there's an example given, which is also very similar, if not identical, to the one in the original English version of the reading of Coffee Grounds in the Game of Amusement, in the Amusements of the Germans, the English book that's also in the British Museum. Then the example actually shows us how stories are made, because as part of it, it says, your united forces have protected you hitherto. And it tells a lesson that virtue always overcomes the intrigue of the bad. and that part of the problem is that envious spirits, envious people have endeavored to injure you. So there we can actually see that there is a resource, which is your united forces on bringing everything together have protected them. The lesson, which is virtue always overcomes the intrigues of the bad, and the challenge, which is in this case envious people which have tried to harm the person or injure them in some way, sort of restrict them. So we can see that the story, even in the Philippe sheet and the German instructions, is actually a story of spinning a tale, spinning a narrative. And the rules of storytelling, which I first modeled from Rachel Pollack, watching her do readings and using something called NLP to model the sort of core basis of how a compelling narrative or story is made from tarot is very similar, in fact identical to the basics of all storytelling, which is in I've slightly reworded or summarized a lot of other people here. A compelling narrative is driven by a protagonist who faces increasing challenges and whose actions demonstrate their character, and they have a character arc which changes from the start to the end of the story, teaching some overall theme or lesson or moral or virtue, something that you learn from the whole film, book, story, joke, whatever narrative we're giving the song and so forth. And therefore, because we are just weaving a narrative, every card in Lenormand and also in tarot in a slightly different way can be told as a scene in a storyboard, as a challenge, resource, and lesson. When we're doing it with tarot, we see each card itself as a challenge, resource, or lesson, because the cards are analogies, they're complex metaphors made up of a lot of symbols on one card, whereas the Lenormand cards are more emblematic, and so they just stand for one thing. For example, mice is thievery or nibbling away at your resources, and anything to do with that very specific significance. And so therefore we use challenge, resource, and lesson in their positions, because as we have seen from the history of the cards themselves, they come from the way in which we've as a species always read coffee grounds and dreams, originally all the way back to cave paintings. So we use challenge, resource, and lesson in the positions, not within the cards themselves. So we're seeing the card as a fixed meaning, hence the use of the keywords, and then we weave the story with them using challenge, resource, and lesson. And as we saw in the grand tableau, and we see in this 9-card method, which is just basically a shortened version of a grand tableau that you can then apply around the whole of the grand tableau. You can apply it in terms of their positions. That which is above is the challenge, that which is below is what you are drawing on as a resource, and that which is level with you is your lesson. So I hope more than anything this video encourages you to look with excitement at a whole grand tableau, not in trepidation, but in excitement of all of the stories you can read in it and how clear those stories are being depicted for you as a storyboard of an original, unique film, which is the story of your sitter's life or your own life, and you can read it all in a grand tableau. And I secondly hope that it encourages you to put a pledge for our Kickstarter campaign in the last 48 hours of the campaign, and perhaps we can put some extra stretch goals in there. And I will be doing more videos for all of the backers of the campaign, so that we can make sure that we all know exactly how to learn Lenormand, its history, and its application to everyday readings for a whole lifetime of divination. Thank you very much.